Leaders come to me when they're leading their organization through some kind of transformation. That's transformation with a capital T, not incremental change, not step change, but major transformation. These are leaders who have big visions about the way they want to change their organization and sometimes even their industry. The leaders that I work with really, they don't have the time, they don't have a year to change their organization. They don't have that kind of time, and they know they don't need to spend that amount of time. They know that by engaging people's minds and their hearts, and by helping people become aware of how their thinking might be getting in the way, they can really accelerate transformation. And in my experience, 75% of what makes change initiatives work is the heart and mind piece.
So many people in a work situation see all the reasons why things can't be different. Why the work environment, there is lots of negativity, and I think that's what stops us from moving forward. What I saw with our people in the sessions with Andrew was really rethinking about that.
I use a framework to accelerate the process of transformation. At the core of it are the three foundational effects of magic: appear, disappear, and restore. When we want to transform something, there are things we want to make appear, there are things we want to make go away, and there are things that need to be healed. There are 6 creative powers that are actually the tools I help people learn to use in order to make things appear, disappear, and be restored. Those tools are the power of inspiration, the power of words, the power of self-awareness, the power of relationships, the power of authenticity, and the power of mastery. So that's a very powerful framework to really simplify the process of transformation.
Some of the things we talked about today through Andrew Bennett is about how to make things appear, how to make things disappear. And the one that resonates the most with me is how do we restore hope? Because that's the human spirit, is around the hope.
Because as we go through life, stuff happens. Relationships get torn apart. Sometimes it's expectations that go unmet. For organizations, it may be a market changes. And sometimes we suffer. And organizations suffer as well. I come from Michigan, the heart of the auto industry, and the state has been devastated by the downturn in the auto industry, particularly for American vehicles. And we've had the highest number of one-way truck rentals, moving truck rentals, out of state in the state of Michigan because it's been so devastated. But stuff happens in life and things get torn apart. And so the process of restoration is about finding the deeper meaning in those things. Now, in the world of the magician, the act of restoration, the act that I just showed you, is actually not about restoration. It's an act of substitution. There's a whole newspaper somewhere, and I switch. I do the switcheroo. And so restoration is a replacement or a substitution. And so the idea here is that we replace something that's no longer useful with something that is useful. Let's think about that in terms of stories that no longer serve us, me, or our organization. Stories that we may be stuck in. And so where there's suffering in an organization, there can also be that kind of transformative breakthrough of looking at that suffering and saying, how does this make us stronger? Let's look at that. How does it inform us about what's important and about how we have grown and grown stronger as a result of it? And that's what I think restoration is really all about. It's about looking at what we need to change in the way we frame our stories, and how by being courageous and transparent and vulnerable, how much that frees other people to access that deep power that's inside them as well.
The clients I work with are leaders who share this understanding that organizations don't change, people do, that it's an inner game. Transformation is an inner game. It begins on the inside. The leaders I work with get that, and they've been through their own process of becoming aware of how their thinking may need to change, how they need to get in touch with their own feelings and engage that energy for the benefit of the organization, and they share their process with other people in the organization. They are leaders who have big hearts and are courageous to be able to look at their own thought processes. And they've gone through change, transformation themselves, and that's what makes them capable of leading others through change, through transformation.
One of the first things that people say when they find out I'm a magician, and I'm not kidding about this, one of the first things they say is, "Can you make my boss disappear?" Or wife. "Can you make my wife disappear?" Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I don't hear people say husband. It's boss or wife. And I'm sure Dr. Freud would have a great time with what that means. So let me just give you a demonstration of disappearance. I'm going to say the magic word, lactose intolerance. And it's gone. Huh? No. Way too long a pause. All right, it's not that good a trick, right? Well, this is actually an important part of the point, which is when magicians do a disappearing act, we're actually not making something disappear, we're actually concealing it. It's an act of concealment. And so I think when someone says, "Can you make my boss disappear? Can you make my wife disappear?" what they're really saying, there's a little edge to it. What we're really wanting to go away is our anxiety. And so I think we get sophisticated at the ways that we deflect our own responsibility. We want things to go away, and so what we actually do is we conceal our responsibility instead of kind of stepping up to it. I began my career working for a former presidential candidate, Ross Perot. He was my not my first boss, but one of my earliest bosses. And I was doing a temporary assignment in Dallas, and I walked into the office one day, and I walked by his office, and I think I was kind of looking down, and he came in and he said, "Andy, I noticed you were kind of looking down in the mouth." And he sat down, and I proceeded to complain about all the bosses that I'd had that didn't know what they were doing and how they were holding me back, and you've heard these stories, right? And so there was a pause after I got through venting, and he looked around my office and he said, "I noticed you got a lot of pictures on the walls." I said, "Yeah." He said, "These different teams you've been on in the company?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You ever notice what they all have in common?" I said, "No." "You." Thank you very little. And that was a bitter pill to swallow. But he was right. You know, I didn't want to kind of step into my own responsibility for what went on, and it was a lot easier for me to kind of hide it under the rug. But, you know, once he pointed that out to me, then I was able to really take responsibility and truly make that anxiety disappear.
Magic is very powerful on a number of levels. First of all, it's a great way to get people engaged. Who doesn't love magic? So it keeps people engaged, it's fun, it is entertaining, but there's so much more to be gained from magic. One of the things that's very interesting is how it seems to engage both hemispheres of the brain. So there's a kind of logical thing going on when I'm sharing a message about transformation. And then there's the creative side of the brain that's working. So you get this integrated thinking that goes on, and it results in people learning very quickly and having shifts in their thinking very quickly. Someone recently said to me, "You were able to cover concepts in 20 minutes that people wrestle with their entire lifetime."